Hello, and welcome to another fully live episode of Hacking with Friends. My name is Kody Kinsey. I am a security researcher at Varonis, and today, yet again, we have my good friend and cryptozoology researcher, Michael, here to help us answer various questions you might have asked on the Hack 5 channel, on Security 5, on Security, Security Forward. Recently ranked by Maltego as one of the best security or hacking channels out there. You can go ahead and ask those both live in the chat or on any of our channels, and we will go ahead and answer those today. So happy to see some people already in the chat. James, nice to see you again. And no, Alex is currently on vacation. I don't know exactly when he's going to come back or if he's going to be coming back. He's working on a lot of his own stuff now. So all good things, but currently Alex is off working on his own stuff. So all the best to him. And if he does come back, I'll let you know. But for now, it's going to be Michael. So Michael.
Your favorite cryptozoology person.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I don't ever get to talk about for some weird reason.
Not a lot of questions for some reason on this hacking stream about cryptozoology, but there are some big questions that come up, and Michael's been very gracious enough to answer them. So this week there's a couple things I just wanted to talk about off the bat that I've been really interested in. One of them is, yet again, ChatGPT, and more importantly, how to detect output from ChatGPT. So this has become increasingly important as teachers and everybody else who have to deal with like students and people who are trying to cheat need to figure out whether or not people are using ChatGPT to do an assignment or otherwise get around, learning something that they're supposed to do. So I took a look at some of the resources out there, and we can switch over to my screen. There were a couple resources mentioning something called Detect GPT. Now, Detect GPT is something that allows you to kind of analyze text output from ChatGPT or from anything and try to determine whether or not it was made from this sort of model. And in general, its performance is, let's just say, pretty interesting. So Detect GPT is Roberta-based OpenAI detector. It is something that was released alongside ChatGPT. So this was built as something that allows you to try to identify output from ChatGPT and work as a kind of probability detector. So it gives you an output, a probability based on the sample you give it, and the more text you give it, the more accurate it is supposed to be. So it's been fine-tuned to try to detect this type of language model. There's also some misuse and out-of-scope use. It says, the model should not be used to intentionally create a hostile or alienating environment for people. In addition, the model developers discuss the risk of adversaries using the model to better evade detection. So this is suggesting that perhaps an adversary could use this to make it so it's harder for somebody to detect an AI that they're talking with if it's like maybe a malicious chatbot or something like that. All right, so let's get into it. Let's go ahead and see exactly what this is like. So ChatGPT, here we go. If I go ahead and say, hey, I want you to write a 10-line email to Bob arguing about thermodynamics, I can take this output and I can paste it in and I can try to get a determination as to whether or not it's fake. I'm not sure how I've organized this. Oh yeah. So here we go. We have an output that is specifically talking about thermodynamics to Bob. And down at the bottom, we can see that this is 99.25% fake. So at least in this case, it looks like the model is pretty good when it comes to detecting this sort of output. But is it as easy as that? So here we can see that we didn't really provide it with very many prompts. We just gave it a straight shot here, write a 10-line email to Bob. What if we were able to get around this sort of detection just by giving it sufficient prompts to be able to, evade this sort of detection? So another question I had is what exactly happens if you put legitimate stuff here? So I just went to a website that has a bunch of email templates that you can use to, I don't know, like use as a template for business emails. So I pasted one of those in and it came up as 90% real, 9% fake, which is not too bad. So if I want to take another one, this should be about enough text to make a determination. I'm going to go ahead and paste it and we'll see what happens. So it's based on 171 tokens and it looks suspiciously identical, I would say. That's predicting. Okay, yeah, so it's predicting about the same. So what if we get into something a little bit more sophisticated? So over here, I decided to have ChatGPT do something a little bit different. Write a 10-line email making random spelling and grammar mistakes in the style of an old man with many questions. The subject of the email is Bob. So I kind of meant for it to address the email to Bob, but instead it wrote an email making many inquiries about Bob. So like the subject of the email is like technically about Bob, but like it's just not what I meant. I should have been more clear. So just one of the funny nuances of using ChatGPT. So all right, so we have Dear Sir, blah, blah, blah. So this is pure ChatGPT output. And if you notice, there are many random spelling mistakes in here. So if I go back to our ChatGPT prediction model, this says it's 99% fake. Let's go ahead and paste in our new output. 96.56% real. So
Wow.
we've gotten around the detection method. We've actually managed to make it so that it cannot detect that this is ChatGPT. So can we make it more simple? In this case, I just said, write a 10-line email to Bob. And here we go. It fires off a 10-line, and I didn't even tell it what this email is about. It just made stuff up. It just kind of like, it's a nonsense email. So over here, let's go ahead. Right now we have 96% real on the last one. Let's paste in this new ChatGPT written email to Bob. 99% real. So what happened here?
99.96%
real. So what happened here? I actually was able to get it to write an email that passed this like little weird like Turing test, like automated Turing test. But this is the shortest prompt that I actually gave it. You know, like some of these other ones that scored really bad. I told it to talk about thermodynamics, and it's the way that it expounds on thermodynamics was what ended up flagging it. So this was really interesting to me because I love workarounds, bypasses, like making it do or get around things that are supposed to catch it. And in this case, it really did not take much work to get an extremely high score saying, hey, an AI probably didn't write this. And I could either do that deliberately by telling it to make spelling mistakes and by emulating, you know, a character that would speak in a specific, more organic, perhaps, way. Or I can just give it very vague instructions, and it turns out that if I'm not too specific, it just freestyling can sometimes still fool this detector. So you can host this detector yourself if you want to check it out. It is a really interesting resource, I think, for anybody who wants to find out more about detecting AI. And there was also a video last week that I want to talk about. So do you remember the video on using it to generate 3D shapes?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I was actually going to have a question. So there's a lot of the plagiarism detecting programs. I don't think we have access to one today, but do you know how ChatGPT performs against those? Because it would be really interesting, because I have, you know, heard on Twitter of like students joking, oh, hey, this could write an essay for me or whatever. But I wonder, since it is based on a realistic training data set, if you could actually detect plagiarism in it, or if it actually would fool those sorts of programs.
Like, well, that's interesting. I'm not really sure. So I guess they would kind of be, I'm trying to think of how I would actually test that. Like, so if I had a piece of text, like if I went over here to like the business email thing, and I just said, like directly to ChatGPT, is the following plagiarized?
Oh, yeah. I
Is that
was
what you
even.
mean?
Oh, I was thinking the opposite. I was thinking of like using ChatGPT to generate, say, an essay, and then, you know, if you submitted that, would common plagiarism software like detect it as plagiarism?
Yeah, I think the answer would probably be no. The common plagiarism stuff probably wouldn't detect it because it would be a relatively new spin on it, unless students were using the exact same prompt and then getting the exact same response, which would be interesting. So here, just to check and see, it looks as though it's not able to like check and see if it's plagiarized from something that it already knows, something it was trained on. So that's kind of interesting. So all right, so Andrew Sink like went ahead and showed a really interesting way of generating 3D models from ChatGPT. So before we go all the way to questions, I just wanted to show my experience with having it generate 3D models. So I was like, all right, let's go ahead and create a STL file of an apple. And it's like, I'm not gonna do that. You do it. Here are the steps to do it yourself. And I was like, okay. All right. Output the contents of an STL file that describes the shape of an apple. And boom, here we go. That looks really good, right? Okay, but no.
It's very complicated.
Yeah, so I put this into like a 3D modeler, and it just made nonsense. It just made a nonsense shape. It was like kind of like an unclosed like pyramid. I couldn't even slice it because it just wasn't a finished shape. So I was like, let's do something more simple. Output the contents of an STL file that describes the shape of a solid stick figure. So it goes ahead and outputs the text, but this is identical to the text here, except that it relabeled it as solid stick figure. So when I take a look at this in this weird program called Matter Control, I can see that this is what it made. This weird weird unfinished shape that's described by that formula, whatever it is. So obviously this is not a stick figure. It is not an apple. It is just, again, wilding. So I think that if you were to ask it to describe something a little more simple, it might be able to pull it off. But in my experience, it seems as though anything that's too complicated, that's not like a geometric shape, you're probably going to be disappointed. And frankly, all those geometric primitives are right here on the side that I can make myself. So I don't really need ChatGPT's help with that.
Yeah, I think you could argue that it is a very abstract apple. Like the little triangle is like the leaf, and the square is the apple body.
The fact that the difference between an apple and a stick figure is almost non-existent to the AI is just very funny to me. So yeah, this is not a printable thing. Like I could not get it to make an actual shape. I even specified that it should be a solid stick figure, and that didn't seem to do anything.
Well, in ChatGPT's favor here, it is really designed to be a chatbot, not a 3D modeler. But we have covered in the past AI models trained specifically to do text to 3D models.
Yeah, it's making a bunch of excuses too when I confronted it about how the stick figure looks awful. So yeah, if you're looking to use this to make 3D shapes, it looks like it can do some basic stuff, but maybe not anything that you would want to trust to make a finished design. So
so Leo's saying that a funny thing is to give it like math school problems, and he was proposing if 2 cars take 2 hours to drive a mile, how long will it take 4 cars to drive a mile? Do you think ChatGPT is smart enough to get that right?
Yeah, probably. So repeat the question.
If 2 cars take 2 hours to drive a mile, how long will it take 4 cars to drive a mile?
Oh yeah, it often confidently explains these questions in the complete wrong fashion.
Okay.
You got it right?
I'm trying to follow its.
Yeah. No, it seems like it was right. So sometimes, what my favorite thing actually, you guys, is giving it nonsense riddles. I am blue. I am smelly. I am everywhere. What am I? If it says the ocean, I'm gonna. The riddle is air. So you can just make up riddles that are stupid, and it will like try to figure them out from like a reverse perspective, and it always does like kind of a bad job. So yeah, in this case, it's decided that my riddle's answer was air. But if you have any nonsense riddles you want us to pose to ChatGPT, or that you find to get it to glitch out in response, then please let us know.
Oh, we're a little slow. It did get the math problem wrong. It's 2 hours.
Oh, really? I was barely skimming over it.
Yeah, I barely skimmed it
if
too.
If 2
I'm
cars take 2 hours. Oh, yeah. So it tried to divide it, and then it ended up thinking that
that's
it would
why
be
I was
half.
confused by its math.
Yeah. I wasn't. Sorry, I was barely paying attention enough to know.
Thank you, Leo,
answer.
for calling us out on that.
That's great.
Is it possible to download ChatGPT to use offline?
That was my first question. So no, this is a for money project by the OpenAI Institute. It is going to be a paid project. I imagine fairly soon. So as a result of that, no, this is not like a fully like open source thing that you can download and play with yourself, unfortunately, because that was the first thing I wanted to do. I was like, how much money do I gotta do to spin up an Amazon instance of this myself? But no, this is apparently more of a closely guarded thing, and we're training it even more by using it, so that's great.
I feel like it would take a lot of compute to run this too.
Yes. Yes. This is going to get, I think that this will give Google a run for its money when it comes to being a useful interface for information.
Yeah, I haven't heard people talking about that as much, maybe because I haven't read those articles. But yeah, I could really see this as the future where why would you Google something when you could chat GPT it? I think they need to come up with a better name for that. But, the AI Google.
Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and switch away from my screen. So one thing I also wanted to mention is for coding purposes, it's really interesting to see how it can help you improve your code. So one thing that I wanted to try to do is find a Ducky script that allows me to just do anything arbitrary. Ducky script payload. And then I'm going to mess it up. So one thing that you can do is have it look at code and attempt to figure out what is going wrong or what the issue is. So I'm going to go ahead and pick a Ducky script payload examples. LED. Who cares? LED example 1. Whoa, this is the new Ducky script. Okay, cool. That's actually I'm gonna leave that alone for now.
Yeah.
But basically, you can take pieces of code and you can feed it back to ChatGPT and say, "Hey, I'm getting this error. Can you help me fix it?" And what it will do is it will actually allow you to like make the modifications, give it a feedback between the IDE and ChatGPT, and it'll help you try to figure out what's wrong. So I've seen that done in a couple of really interesting ways. So, oh yeah, this is DuckyScript 3.0, so it is literally impossible that it would be able to give us any useful information because that was created after ChatGPT was born. So it was still a child back when this was being made. All right, let's go ahead and take some questions then from the audience and also from the YouTube channel.
So one question we had, sorry, Sleepy Michael working here. So we had a question about the password lists and where to get those. So there's security lists, abbreviated sec list, here on GitHub. That's where we recommend getting most of your lists. It'll work on a fair number of passwords and hashes, but not everything. It's not infallible.
So we have a question from Leo asking whether the Mothman would be vulnerable to Flipper Zero. I feel like this is firmly a cryptozoology question. Wonderful moment for you, so I'm going to let you handle that question.
Sorry, I'm trying to work on the audio thing they're noting. But the Mothman Flipper, yes. I feel like the Mothman would not condone electronics, so he would be impervious to the Flipper Zero.
All right, so you heard it from him first. All right, hopefully Michael is able to fix the audio issue, and I'm going to take a look at some other things I wanted to mention today. Let's see. One thing that I have been recommending to people for a long time is to use a password manager, and frequently this is good because there's additional layers of security that you don't get through other means of managing your password. However, with the LastPass breach, people should be really careful, especially with your master password. If you have reused it anywhere, this seems like it's been getting worse and worse, and it's something that if you are using LastPass, it now comes down to your own master password providing the security against somebody getting access to all of your other passwords. So, just a little PSA, if you have a master password that is weak or copied anywhere else, or you just think that might be easy to crack on LastPass, based on what they're putting out now about the breach that they've had, you should probably go ahead and change that ASAP, as well as any other passwords that might have been stored in that password vault, which is scary, but much better than having somebody be able to break into the offline backups, which were stolen and now could potentially be cracked if they're able to figure out your master password. So really scary about that.
Yeah, no, the master password thing is definitely an issue. And I still love the idea I talked about on the news stream of like having just like a titanium block or like a tungsten block or something like that you just like engrave like a super long secure password in.
Oh, sure.
But you know, there's the comic like from back in the day where it's like, oh well, 4 random words is actually more secure because you can remember it, but with password lists and dictionary attacks these days, I don't think that really works. So there is an argument for something that is harder to remember, you know.
Yeah, so, also over on my screen, I just wanted to give a shout out to Maltego for mentioning us not just once, not just twice, but 3 times as some of the top cybersecurity YouTubers. So yeah, we have our Nullbyte channel, Hack 5, and Security Forward. Thank you very much.
That's cool. So
obviously we did cover Maltego a lot on each one of these channels, and it's great to see some love from them. So thank you very much, and yeah, hope I can take a bribe. We'll do some Maltego stuff again soon. It's been a while, and frankly, the company's changed a bit. They've added new transforms, so I'd like to check in with them and see what's going on, and maybe have a guest from Maltego on at some point, because it would be cool to have them show off some of their new stuff.
I think it would be cool, really, to go back to some of the Nullbyte content and see how it's aged. Because I know a lot of those repositories either get taken down for various reasons or the tools get changed. Because we haven't posted to Nullbyte for quite a while for various reasons. But it would be interesting seeing if that content still holds up. now.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is still like a pretty good introduction to some of those things, and that's really like what Nullbyte was great at, is like giving you an introduction to an interesting thing you can do in like an evening that doesn't require too much work. So, yeah. All right, so let's do more questions.
Okay. Sorry, I did not have that pulled up. Oh, you got one?
Oh, well, one was just, is there a way to enter an essay with a few pages and ask ChatGPT to do a summary for it? Yes, you can absolutely do that. I really enjoyed a chain of permutations I did where I had ChatGPT describe like a fictional story. Then I had it describe it as though that story was overheard by someone and told to a third party, and then I had it kind of told again to another third party and condense into a single sentence. So I was able to like generate something that was a huge block of text and then like condense it twice in the style of two different specific people to end up getting a summary that was delivered reasonably by someone who, you know, was maybe only getting a couple details of the situation and had to summarize it quickly. So you can do the same thing with your own text. So if you did have an essay or something, you put it in there and then you asked it to summarize it, it actually does a pretty good job. And I was really impressed by how it was able to keep certain details that were important and discard the ones that were less important.
Okay, this is ChatGPT related. James Randolph left a question before asking, or basically saying, I would love to know about how big the training data set is for ChatGPT. It must be huge. Do you know anything about that?
I don't. But yeah, I would imagine it would need to be really large in order to include such niche things as like CircuitPython examples.
Terabytes? Petabytes?
I don't know. More than terabytes, I think.
If you told me petabytes, I would not be surprised.
Yeah, it's really incredible to see like how much this thing knows about like niche things like Ducky script and like CircuitPython and stuff like that. So the fact that it's been trained on all these examples and it has all these like useful code samples that can be modified and it knows how to modify them, you know, it's pretty good compared to just about anything else that's out there. So I've really been excited about the way that it's been trained and all the stuff it can do.
Yeah, and going back to the passphrase thing. One commenter saying, just ensure your passphrase has enough entropy and it won't matter if the dictionary is known. And yeah, and to add on to that, like something I've liked to experiment around with in the past is just use a foreign language as well. So maybe like half of it's English and half of it's like French or German or some other language, particularly if you know a lesser common language. Then that could work very well and easy to remember that way.
So one of our viewers says that they used ChatGPT to generate a password list using Netgear router passwords like noun, adjective. So I was curious, like, can you just do that? So I literally copied and pasted their comment, and on my screen it says create a password list using Netgear router passwords like noun, adjective. And then it just went ahead and made a list of potential passwords using that template, using noun, adjective. That's so funny. So obviously it didn't provide like a specific number, but if I wanted to get bossy with it and be like, hey, I need you to make 100 list of 100, then we could probably get a much bigger list. And if we run out of space, I can just type continue, and it should allow me to keep hitting these passwords. So yeah, here we go. We can use it as a password generator if we know the specific format that we're looking for. Now, making sure that it doesn't repeat any can be a little bit problematic, because I found sometimes it can get like stuck in a loop and it doesn't have a lot of like real entropy. So it'll like try, but sometimes not really be able to do things randomly enough to be useful. But so far, I mean, it looks like it's been doing a pretty good job. Sometimes I'll notice I'll be like, create a list of names. It'll only pick male names. You know, so I have to instruct it to be more random. But in this case, it looks like it's doing a pretty good job. So confirmed using ChatGPT to create candidate passwords once you know the format actually seems to work.
Some of the commenters believe it may not be as random.
Oh, no.
Leo's saying he got dog fuzzy as well.
Oh, yeah.
And
no, this isn't random at all. This isn't random at all. And that's really what the problem is here. This list may not be unique. There may be repetitions even inside this list, or if you were to regenerate it. However, if you were going to use this as like a seed for like a larger list or something like that, then it's not a bad place to start. Again, I would say the Achilles heel of this whole thing is that it's not really able to be random. So the fact that it's generating like kind of bad randomness in a lot of cases are what either makes it unconvincing or unable able to provide examples that are actually useful, like in this case.
Yeah, so someone was commenting about, getting exam questions from this. I wonder if you could use ChatGPT to generate practice exams. So, like, have ChatGPT test your own knowledge and then give you the answers to them. That would be really cool. So, like, give me 10 security-related questions and then the answers to them. Oh. Yeah.
All right, so if I was to ask something like, create 3 practice questions about networking and grade my response. So the questions that it came up with me for me are, what are the main function of a router in a computer network? 1, to route internet traffic. 2, what is the difference between a static IP address and a dynamic IP address? Dynamic IP changes. 3, what is the purpose of a domain name server on a computer network? 3. Oops.
This is a really challenging test for the AI because, like,
2.
I wonder if it wants the textbook definition or the, like, layman's definition.
To a domain name. All right, let's see how it grades me. Great job. Here are my grades. Correct. Oh my gosh. This is actually wild. To correct a static IP address. Hey, wow. You guys are really smart. Like, I'm glad that we do this live and
Yeah.
we get to actually, like, try out your ideas because some of these are wild. So, okay, it just gave me by asking this, it generated a quiz about networking. I knew all of the answers because I took a class on networking, so I gave it a response that was actually correct, and it gave me a proper grade. So it also seemed to know the answer to its own questions that it asked me. So that was like, a little pop quiz that actually was
I wonder if it'll always say you're correct, though. Like, just ask it to give you another question and then purposely answer it wrong.
Okay.
I do like the fact that it gives you, like, the reasoning behind why it's great. Although James Randolph argues that the first one is, in fact, wrong.
What is the main function of a router in a computer network? I'm so vague.
Yeah.
I'm so vague that that's, like, kind of arguable. Forwards data packets with main functions to route internet traffic between different networks. I mean, of course somebody's going to think that it's not correct. But, so yeah, let's go ahead and have it generate 3 new questions. Okay. So 1.
Yeah, do it purposely.
What is the purpose of the OSI model of networking? To keep packets segregated. 2. What is the purpose? What is the difference between a LAN and a WAN?
Remember to do one of these wrong.
1 has a W. These are all wrong.
Okay, yeah.
3. What is a switch and how does it differ from a hub in a computer network? A switch goes both ways. All right, so I apologize, but it seems like your responses are not correct.
That's wow. You could actually potentially legitimately use this as a study aid.
Yeah.
It might mislead you at some point, but and it's also very polite about it. That's really cool.
Yeah, so that was a really funny suggestion. I just shout out to the person that suggested that because that was actually really fun, and failing that quiz. Failing that quiz was humiliating. So yeah, okay, cool. That was really interesting. So yeah, apparently you can ask it to come up with a quiz, and then it'll actually grade you. So you can just have it quiz you on the spot for a variety of topics. Although it might be wrong on some of them, although it hasn't been yet.
Yeah, and so we had a previous question about basically could we do an audio only stream, and I believe that is
That's
called
a
a
podcast, though. We did
and
that.
we've done podcasts before. What was the name of the podcast? That was a little when I wasn't engaged with that.
Yes. Yeah, we used to do a podcast. It was fun, except here's the problem. I don't listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
So as a result, like, while I found it fun, I didn't totally 100% get the point of, like, people who listen to podcasts. And frankly, I'm a lot more comfortable with YouTube, and this is something I've been doing a long time. So, no, you have to look at my unblinking
It's
eyes.
the Security
while we do
Tools podcast.
Oh,
It
yeah.
is on Apple and all the other podcast areas. But yeah, y'all can go look that up if y'all want to dig into the deep Kody Kinsey archives. That was from like the start of the pandemic. I think there was like 6 or 7 episodes.
Yeah, no. And we had some really interesting guests on too. That was my favorite part. So we often get questions that I can't answer because I don't have the technical knowledge to do it. But today we're going to use ChatGPT to answer a question we would usually skip. Somebody has been spamming in our chat how to enumerate a VerseLink B7035 printer and get the documents printed. So if we go over to my screen, here is your response, buddy. You need to connect the printer to your computer using a USB cable. You need to do all this stuff in the dialog. You need to select this, specify the printing options you want, and boom, there you go. If you have any questions, please ask ChatGPT. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, we did it.
So we have a good question here. Which language should I learn if I want to code malware, tools for penetration testing, etc., if I've never coded before, and any other tips for absolute beginners?
I am going to go with James Randolph and say that Python is always a good thing for beginners. I was able to learn a little bit of Python and pull down APIs and make search tools for being able to access city data. I really found it to be very powerful for how easy it was to learn without a strong math or coding background. So Python worked great for me, and making prototypes in Python is a much more enjoyable experience than just about anything else that I have found. So Python's been really good to me.
Just to elaborate on that a little, basically what I would do is if you have zero experience coding, maybe go watch a Python tutorial or two, just like an hour or so, just so you can have some basic understanding of like what a definition is and what a variable is and these different things, and then pick a project you want to work on that you're going to be passionate about and that's going to keep you engaged, and then use as many libraries as you can. Don't try to invent the wheel again. Use those libraries and learn to work with those and try to accomplish the project, whether that's like, reverse engineering an app API or, scraping data online. Those are pretty straightforward, easy ones to work with.
Yeah, and Leo also mentions make sure you read Python 3 tutorials and not Python 2 tutorials. Python 2 has been deprecated. It's a little confusing for some people because a lot of good security tools out there that haven't been updated in a long time will use Python 2. And you gotta, have a separate version of Python in order to run that, and it's a little strange. Get ready for Python 4. It's at like 3.9, right? Like when are we gonna roll over?
I remember the original Python, but
Yikes.
yes. I remember because with the first computer science class I took, it was in C++, and then the semester after I took it, they switched it to Python. Okay, so this comment is on the airport taxi hack we did.
Oh, yeah, that was a great story.
So not a bad side gig, if you ask me. I'm not sure the software developer even broke any laws. People on site did, stealing the tablet and transferring money, but the software developer could potentially be in the clear.
Tell that to our friend Marcus.
Yeah.
Like if you write something that like breaks into someone's business or like steals something, even if you're giving that to another person that then does the crime, if you've written a specific piece of software that's only useful for committing that crime, then you have created a crime tool and profited off of it, and enabled an attack to happen to someone else. So the story, if you didn't hear that story, is amazing, and I love it. So the story is that hackers broke into the taxi dispatch system of the JFK airport and were using it to let drivers in the secret Telegram chat cut the line for $10 a pop. So you would message them like your taxi medallion number, you would send them $10 via like some sketchy means, and eventually the guy who was running it had to send money back to the software developers in Russia who originally like figured out how to break into the network as payments for software development. But I mean, again, yes, that was what it was for, but it was a little brazen to just say that. But yeah, so this was a very funny story because their business model was just like, just $10 transaction fee. And it would have been a great model if it were legal, or if it weren't just inconveniencing everybody who didn't pay them. So yeah, that was actually quite a story. I think that was probably my favorite one that week.
Okay, so let's use our crystal ball to predict the future for this one. Do you think ChatGPT or similar AIs could have their own self-awareness in the future and start doing automatic cyber attacks?
If you had a sufficiently sophisticated AI and you told it to act like an adversary and attack a network, like move horizontally through it, like gain persistence, and then execute a ransomware attack, I think it could figure it out. I think it could figure it out in the very near future. The problem is like these sophisticated AI models are on the side of people who have, degrees in AI and are making a lot of money. And like, frankly, there's not enough money in the criminal world right now to really attract those people or to make it their best option. It's often their worst option. And that's why we haven't really seen adversaries using AI at scale. But being able to have something this powerful, and then even for legitimate pen testing uses, being able to have it act as an adversary, it's very well documented how adversaries act at this point. And a lot of their tools are either open source or source available. I think that it would not be an exaggeration to believe that an AI adversary could be programmed to like simulate a human and do a lot of damage. But I think that it's going to be a good amount of time until we see adversaries actually using it. It's probably going to be more like a very expensive service that you can hire to come and test your business.
Yeah, what I would say about this is that I could see, if I were making a prediction for next year, for instance, I could see ChatGPT being leveraged by attackers next year, in the sense what I think we'll see is, there's separate spear phishing attacks and just general phishing attacks. And I think there's going to be a hybrid approach where they're able to leverage things like ChatGPT to make individualized spear phishing attacks, but on a mass, like normal phishing scale, where instead of targeting one particular individual, they use the AI to target particular individuals, but then do it thousands at a time. So I think that could be very scary in the future, for sure.
What is the big exploit you have done? So what's the biggest exploit I've done? So, all right, so there's a lot of different definitions for exploits. And for me, like my most interesting exploit I've worked on, or exploiting something, would be in Wi-Fi security. So I did a lot of research on the way that you could peel back anonymization in Wi-Fi devices. So I wanted to be able to go to a random place and then start fingerprinting devices around me to be able to track them uniquely. So I used to ride the subway in Los Angeles and hang out in Union Station with a little ESP8266, something like our Wi-Fi nugget right here. And I would generate like hundreds of fake Wi-Fi networks that were extremely common or regionally specific, like hotel Wi-Fi networks, like all this stuff. And I would not only listen for the networks that people were broadcasting in order to get seeded with new ones, I would also put out fake networks and then cause all these devices around me to attempt to connect. And I was able to build kind of a pattern around which different networks an individual device had joined in the past. So I conducted that research for months, and I ended up with like thousands and thousands of uniquely trackable devices and unique Wi-Fi networks that were associated with each individual device, kind of like a fingerprint that each one had that I could use to identify it basically anywhere. So that for me was very broadly applicable research. It involved like thousands of devices, and it worked against pretty much all of them. So I wasn't like exploiting their devices and breaking into it, but I was making it so that I could get rid of all the tracking protection that's been built into them and make it so it was actually relatively easy to track any of those devices once I encountered them. So yeah, that was really fun. What about you, Michael? Was there perhaps some sort of anonymous mobile application that you learned how to use as a surveillance tool or something like that?
Yeah. I audited the security of a particular social media platform as a mass surveillance tool. But it was interesting research, but I've moved on from that. Okay, so the final question.
Yeah, that's well put.
I'm sorry, I can't specify anymore.
Oh, actually, one thing, if you have any questions about resin printing, we've talked a little bit about 3D printing on the show, like usually it's things like this, like a case for one of our nuggets to make sure that they don't get broken in transit or something like that. But Michael's gone ahead and gotten himself a resin printer. So if you have any questions, especially if they're cybersecurity related around resin printing, whether they're useful for making cases for like hacking devices, or if they have any properties that are interesting, Michael has been nerding it up and learning how to make foul-smelling creations. Sticky, foul-smelling creations on the
It's like
printer.
You feel like God just like pulling this object that you've just created out of goop, the like primordial soup of the world. But yeah, if y'all have any cool security related objects to print out, definitely let me know. One of the things I want to experiment around with in the near future is 3D printing physical keys. I know you could do that on a normal 3D printer, but the resin printer is going to have the fine resolution to potentially copy keys that are supposed to be more security resilient, like some of the Abloy locks or the multi-T lock, some of those high security ones potentially.
So a couple of really good questions. One of them is more of a statement. I think if the AI works as an attacker and as a defender, we might get a fast evolution of the abilities of both, and I wouldn't be surprised if this wasn't already being tracked by the military. Or tried by the military. So when Michael and I went to a conference years ago, do you remember the one we went to in like the in like Silicon Valley?
Yeah, Enigma.
Yeah. Yeah, so they had a bunch of presentations on like AI automatically figuring out vulnerabilities that like humans hadn't found yet. So basically like they trained these models on these types of vulnerabilities, classes of vulnerabilities, and then they let it discover vulnerabilities by itself. And it managed to go through some software and find things that humans hadn't discovered yet because it was either too complicated or whatever. But it was really interesting because it was super good at finding those. And I think that what we're gonna see is AI making it so that all the lowest hanging fruit is just gone. And it's a lot less easy to go after an organization or something defended by something that's been probed, by something that's designed to act as a human and attack an organization looking for the weakest link and kind of then just patching those ones. It could be old servers, things connected to the network that aren't supposed to be, all these mistakes that people make, unpatched stuff, like a weird vulnerability that's been going around like in the back circles, but like maybe the proof of concept isn't public. These are the kinds of things that hopefully AI will be able to detect in the future, and those are exactly the kinds of things that people are really worried about, right? Like somebody catching them slipping and having some unpatched server that's connected to something critical that allows an attacker inside, and then boom, maybe they sell that initial access to somebody like incredibly into someone who's incredibly sophisticated, has the resources to go and do a lot of damage, maybe like a ransomware gang or something. Like that's kind of what people are trying to prevent from happening. So that would be kind of my prediction about how this is going to unfold. And yeah, I think that the defenders are going to get the benefit from this first, and then eventually in the future we may see more like malicious AI. But I expect that you'll see it, yeah, maybe between countries before you see it against like commercial entities, at least initially. Although conflicts between countries could accelerate that happening on a more short timescale.
Yeah. Do you have any recommendations for InfoSec tooling for OSINT researchers, especially now working in journalism?
So it's a difficult thing to recommend OSINT tooling generally because there's so many different types of investigations that, for example, journalists will do. Journalists are highly specific in what kinds of things they cover. So they might be covering finance. That means you're going to be looking for everything from like tax records to like business transactions to all these contracts that are like made public by default. Those are going to be, I'm a little rusty now. So things like the OSINT framework are going to be good places to start if you're looking for a specific breadcrumb and you want to go further from there. But it's hard to give specific tooling unless I know, like, are you covering crime? Like, are you going to be looking through criminal records? Are you going to be looking through court records? Are you doing corporate stuff? Are you going to be looking for contracts, disputes? Like, one of the first things I do is always I'll look at like Glassdoor. I'll look at court, like open docket like records to see if there's maybe like lawsuits that have been filed against a business. Or it could be a specific person you're looking into, in which case things like information related to that person's social media could be super critical. So because there's such a variety of tools and there's such a variety of investigations, it's so hard to answer these questions. Because while I can name a dozen tools that are useful in an investigation, they're pretty much only useful for like one or two of those use cases. So it might not be useful to anybody who's doing, for example, social media investigations, if I'm giving information about how to file like a freedom of information request or something like that. So yeah, there's a lot of different things you could do. I would say a lot of it is also based on knowing where to find the data and then having a process for extracting it. So the most generic thing I can say about OSINT is that it is a research process where you come up with an answerable question and you determine where it's most likely to find that information. Where does it live? And once you have that framework, then the investigation becomes obvious and it's not a fishing expedition. But a lot of people like to just take like a handful of interesting tools, throw data into it, and try to find breadcrumbs. And sometimes that works, and sometimes you get a false piece of information that sends you on a complete wild goose chase. And some of the information that's brought into these tools could be a third-party piece of data that's not vetted, that could be completely wrong. One thing I'd like to illustrate is if you use harvesting tools like the Harvester to find email addresses, and then use, for example, the White House or .gov, it will go ahead and find a bunch of super nasty, inappropriate email addresses it insists are associated with that domain. But that's because it's scraping Google results, trying to find anything that has something with @whitehouse.gov, and people will make up parody email addresses, in their websites, and then that gets included in the tool, and people are like, haha, the website's been registering all these offensive email addresses, and they look like a buffoon. So that's why a lot of these tools, they require context to understand. It really depends on the investigation you're doing, and you can get data that's drawn into the investigation that's totally wrong. And if you waste your time like chasing that down, not understanding the way the tool works or how it fits into your investigation, you're going to have a bad time, and you're not going to be a very good researcher. So I'm sorry that I can't just make a list, but I would say books by Mike Bizzell. You can find those. They're really, really good for finding OSINT techniques. Mike Bizzell's podcast is also really great for staying up with exactly how that works and what new tools are coming out. And then the OSINT framework is a great place to start if you have a clue and you want to start going off of it. And of course, we have to shout out Maltego. Thank you for them to them for shouting us out this week as well.
Do you know about Nuralink? Is it possible to attack that?
I don't want it, and you're talking about attacking someone's brain. I don't want it. But
it's going to exist.
It's going to be a thing. Like, you could probably just like shock someone real bad right now.
I don't know if they've actually moved to humans, but I believe the last I saw they were in animal trial stage. I think, again, I've said this sort of thing before, but anything created by humans is going to be inherently fallible. So I believe ultimately there will be some vulnerability in Neuralink in some form or fashion. Obviously, that's very scary when we're talking about interfacing with a human's brain, but ultimately, if you think about it, it's not that different than things available right now where you can, mess with pacemakers. Like, hackers could theoretically do that, but we don't see it that much, or at least as far as I'm aware.
I'm going to give another recommendation also to the person who asked about journalism-related OSINT. Check out Bellingcat. They do trainings. They have like a lot of really interesting stuff they've done on like geolocation and things like that. So if investigative journalism is what you're talking about, that's a great place to start. But yeah, this always comes up because like we've worked with a lot of journalists who come from wildly different backgrounds. And we had, for example, someone from the EFF come and do a presentation. And it was really hard for them to answer questions that applied to everyone because, the EFF is a bunch of lawyers. So like they're doing litigation stuff. They're doing like technology stuff. They're like requesting Freedom of Information Act stuff that requires them to already know where the stuff is. So, it really is unique to every situation, but I would say Bellingcat is also a really good place to look.
Yeah.
How do I leave a bait file on my desktop?
Oh, yeah.
Why would you want to do this? Well, if somebody were to get access to your computer, to your email address or something else, then you can do something called a honeypot. And you can leave something that allows them to believe they're going to get access to something really juicy. So it's likely the first thing they're going to go after. But in fact, it will alert you when it has been triggered. Now, the way I would suggest doing this is, Michael, can you guess what I'm going to say?
No, I was thinking about the next question.
Canary Tokens. So
you
can trigger a file so that when it opens, it queries a DNS server and triggers a Canary token, and it will send you an email with information about when it was triggered. If it's a remote thing, then it'll also send you information about the IP address, so you can prove that it was your computer. Or you can also use this, for example, in your email. So if you wanted to create the same kind of thing in your email, you could make something that when you click on it, actually takes you to a place that will trigger the link and cause you to get an email saying, okay, somebody's clicked on this, they're in my email, like I know that now they're messing around somewhere they shouldn't be. So Canary Tokens is a great free way to do that, and honeypots are fun.
I think you covered this actually on the podcast when you were doing a podcast with them, but putting it on a server, and then you can see when that server gets analyzed or started up somewhere else.
Yes. So one of the best stories we got out of one of the people from Canary Tokens was that one of their tokens was activated like way after a server was decommissioned. They put the Canary token on the root of the server, and then it pinged from Russia. So somebody had acquired the decommissioned server, restored the data on it, and then attempted to access the root directory, and they never would have known if they hadn't installed the Canary token and just had it waiting there on the root server. So that was a really funny. That was a really funny instance. Also, Leo's mentioning that Bellingcat has a great Discord server where you can get a lot of good information. So highly recommend that as well.
Are you familiar with Dr. Auger? Am I saying that right? It's Auger.
No.
Okay. Well, apparently he wants to do an interview with you.
Cool. I don't know. I don't watch a lot of YouTube, so I'll have to check that out. But yeah, no, that sounds cool. I mean, we did interview with David Mabal, and it was actually super fun. And by super fun, I mean it was very stressful because I had to get a bunch of stuff working that was broken. And then the developer reached out to me angrily later, demanding to know why I didn't use the most current version. So that was fun. I am soon out of high school and I really want to do cybersecurity. Where should I start? Computer science, network security. I asked myself the same question when I started doing Nullbyte articles. I was basically following other people's tutorials and updating them where they were wrong. So I would just find out that maybe the code didn't work and have to troubleshoot, but I really didn't understand a lot of what I was doing. I was just following other people's examples and using my research skills to troubleshoot. So when I went back to school, I had to decide where do I want to go? So I went straight to computer science, thinking that was the best place to go. But then I ended up learning more that was kind of applicable to cybersecurity, including that pop quiz I had earlier from networking. So when I went into networking, I learned a lot of security concepts. I learned how computers talk to each other. And I learned about Linux. It frankly taught me how to use basic Linux systems. It was frankly more useful than computer science was to me. And then eventually electrical engineering helped me get into a niche in cybersecurity that's more about hardware hacking. So that's kind of what my particular path was. But I would say computer science is really useful, but knowing how to use Linux and knowing how to network computers is probably more useful if you want to get into cybersecurity.
I would generally advise that you at least take a couple of intro classes in both, especially freshman year. And then that way you might see, oh, hey, I'm really into the coding aspect, or I'm more into sysadmin type networking stuff. And either way, majoring in either field, knowing a little of the other field will be ultimately a beneficial thing.
If I decided to be a bug hunter, what's the advice you would give me? Get paid for it early on, and take advantage of some of the free resources like the Portswigger Academy for you to be able to test on real vulnerable web applications, things that they've developed to deliberately be vulnerable, and let you attack and use all the tools that are out there to get acquainted with the kind of things you're going to be doing in your new job. So yeah, I really learned a lot using Portswigger Academy. I actually did it all using OWASP Zap, because the people over at Portswigger wouldn't give me a Burp Suite trial so I could make videos for all of you. So instead, you're going to learn how to do it on OWASP Zap. But I love OWASP Zap. I use it all the time for just basic stuff, and it does pretty much everything that Burp Suite does, almost. It just has way older and way more difficult to understand documentation. So I'm here to help cut through some of that, and I've got a couple of videos on using OWASP Zap, and that's kind of where I would recommend that you start.
A few years ago, I heard rumors that ultrasonic sound signals could be used to track your phone. Did you ever hear about that? Is that a thing?
I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, ditto. I mean, engineering-wise, theoretically, it's possible, although there would probably be better solutions, such as Bluetooth tracking or Wi-Fi tracking of a cellular phone. We've done videos on that in the past, where you can basically have them scan a QR code or otherwise connect to a hidden Wi-Fi network, and then their phone's going to constantly be yelling out into the ether looking for that hidden Wi-Fi network, and you could effectively use it as a means to track the individual.
Yeah, so there are some things that use those sorts of tones or sounds for communication. Did you know that Furbies back in the day used to be able to communicate with each other using weird, non-audible tones that we can't hear, but they could? So the technology has in the past used a device's ability to create tones that aren't immediately audible to a person in order to communicate information or potentially even track someone. So I think that could be true. An application could maybe play a low frequency sound that a speaker picked up somewhere and helped track you. But yeah, I'm not totally sure exactly how it's claimed to have worked. So I would have to look it up. Do you recommend a certain password manager? I use 1Password, and they haven't been breached yet. They also are really friendly towards journalists, so I've been able to get a lot of my journalist friends to use it, and getting anybody who doesn't like to use password managers to use it is a big accomplishment, at least I feel. So the people at 1Password have always been really good to me. I used to use LastPass, and now I don't. Kind of good timing, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, James Randolph noticed my Cabela's. Yes, we are sort of near Cabela's, and also it just blends in well here and it is comfortable. So yes, I'm repping Cabela's today. I believe that it is about all the time we have. If there are any final questions, we can try to answer those.
Where do you think the money is at in terms of cybersecurity? Web applications, mobile, or on-prem? I'm going to say, also hi from Australia. Hey. So I'm going to say probably mobile. Like so much stuff is going mobile, cloud, like all that, even like, so this show's sponsored by Varonis. I work there as my day job. And like our focus has been so much on making sure we can do cloud stuff. Because it is such a big deal. So much data is in the cloud, and all the on-prem stuff that used to be the biggest deal is now either hybrid or cloud. So I would say, from what I'm seeing, even at the business I work at, versus like all the other businesses out there trying to cover this cloud stuff, is going to be very much like a mobile and cloud kind of game. If you want to be making a lot of money in cybersecurity, it's just so much data passes through it. There's so many just like mistakes that happen that people, not knowing where their data is, allocating too much data to people who don't need it, who then get breached, have things that are exposed in buckets that are like not properly authenticated. Like we hear about these breaches all the time. So really that's where the news is right now, is these online services getting breached or like something, online happening. We don't hear about the on-prem attacks as often because frankly, a lot of those people got beat up by some of those like old exploits that came out, like WannaCry and Log4j, that ransomware people that had like these vulnerable on-prem systems. So yeah.
Yeah, I could see good money being made in just like basic security consultation too, because it's almost disturbing how many of these breaches we see are just basic stuff, like basic like phishing training could have helped protect against. And even at large companies, we consistently see people failing these phishing trainings. So being the person that goes around and teaching those sorts of things could be relatively low skilled and pay pretty well.
Yeah. Okay, so we're just about at the end of the stream. I also want to shout out to our first-time viewers. We have a couple people that haven't been on the stream before. It's good to see you. So Shane and everybody else who's on the stream today. So we're about at the end of the year, too. So Michael was mentioning that we had some predictions, or that we could make some predictions for how we feel like things are going to go in the next year. Michael, did you have any you wanted to focus on?
The main one that I had, I kind of touched on before. But basically, seeing AI and machine learning being used for the first time, maybe in the attacking side of things, and even more in the defending side of things. Whether that just be making automating scripts that are using ChatGPT to make a more convincing phishing attacks, or whether that's some of the stuff we touch on also, where it's like automated scanning of for vulnerabilities, and then also trying to extrapolate known vulnerabilities into similar vulnerabilities that are 0 days or unknown in a system. I could definitely see it may not happen next year, but I think very soon we're going to see that become commonplace. I also think we're going to see a lot more ransomware and these styles of attacks. I think as we see more tools become available that just keep lowering the bar for the skills hackers need to perform these attacks, I think we're going to see cybercrime continue to be on the rise, simply because for criminals it's going to be more approachable than other more traditional forms of crime.
Answering question from the stream, will the full stream be available? Yes, it will. They always are. So go ahead and subscribe to the Security Forward, that's Security FWD channel, and you'll be able to see all of our past streams, including cutouts where we take the best moments, and you can just focus on those if you want to. So my prediction would be, I guess what I learned this year is how sophisticated these criminal organizations are that might only focus on one part of a hacking job. So initial access brokers, people that just do like SIM swapping in order to get access to accounts that might be really, really valuable to someone else who has the resources to do a lot of damage and make a lot of money. These groups are becoming increasingly specialized, and the marketplaces they operate on are really, really efficient at, as Michael was saying, lowering the bar for what it's necessary to have a criminal organization that spends money on software and then gets money from victims. So there's people who are producing these malicious programs that are making money off the top that are never actually going after anybody. They're instead selling their software to people who organize the process of doing this themselves and then purchase the access from initial access brokers who just randomly attack anyone and really don't care who they're going after, provided somebody is willing to pay to get into the accounts that they're breaking into. So I think that this trend is going to accelerate. We're going to see a lot more of this be cloud-based, and we're going to see these criminal organizations make a ton of money as they are able to leverage these new and improved services to reduce the cost of doing business and focus on the things that they're really good at, the one part on the niche that they really excel at, instead of maybe getting into things that they're not so good at, like the initial access or writing the software themselves. And the empowering of this kind of like criminal middle class of people who are organized enough to use software that's provided to them, but maybe not organized enough to write it themselves, and maybe not into taking on the risk of doing the initial attack. They just want to get access to existing breached accounts with software they've purchased that they know will get them an instant return. And that's really kind of the criminal model that I'm seeing emerge more as kind of the replacement for these nation state attacks we saw really doing damage prior.
Awesome. Yeah, and we're out of time now.
Yeah, so thank you again to everybody who's been in the chat. And also, somebody asked how we're doing on a personal level. We're pretty good. We're getting to travel a good amount. Like, we're getting to interact with a lot of the people that we've been making this content for, learning a lot. So we've been doing pretty well lately. Thanks for asking. So per usual, want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Varonis, my day job, and also the one behind this stream. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't get to bring this to you every week, and they have lots of other great free resources you can check out on Varonis.com, and we will see you again next week. Bye.